Well, g'day, you sevens. All right, today we are starting a brand new topic. It is called integers, which is a word that you may or may not heard of before. It's a little bit similar to whole numbers, but with a very important difference. Okay, so we're going to begin by defining what an integer is. So, an integer is simply a number that has a size and a direction. So either positive or negative. All right. So what I want you to imagine is your typical ruler, which starts at the far left-hand side at 0 and goes up to 30. But it could go up to anything. They could make a massive ruler that goes to 1,000,000. But they always start at 0. Now I want you to imagine a different ruler where 0 is actually in the middle, and on the right-hand side of 0, it's a regular old ruler, 0 up to 30 or whatever number. But on the left-hand side of 0, you have negative numbers. So -1, -2, -3, -4. And you might think, well, what do these numbers represent? You can't have -7 apples or something like that. Well, I know it seems like they don't mean much, but actually, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion now, and you're going to realize that you probably know more about negative numbers than you realize. So what we're going to do first is we are going to come up with a list of a list of words that have similar meanings to positive and negative. Words that are in real world sort of contexts. So hopefully they'll mean something to you, and then you'll go, oh yeah, now I remember that negative numbers are a real thing. Okay, so here we go. The first pair of words is going to be profit and loss. All right, so if I'm a business owner, I can say that my business had a profit of plus $10,000 today. And that's a number with a positive or a negative sign in front of it. Okay, so that's an integer, positive 10,000. If I've had a bad day in business, I can say that today our business made minus $6,000. In other words, we had a loss of $6,000, but represented as a directed number, which is another word for an integer. We would say we made minus $6,000 as a loss. Okay. All right. Another pair of words. What about up and down? Now let's imagine that I am on the 10th story of a building. If I walk up 3 more stories, then that can be represented by an integer plus 3. And I would be, of course, on the 13th story. Now, if I start on the 10th story and I walk down 3 stories, which will bring me to the 7th story, that journey would be represented by an integer called minus 3. Okay. All right, moving on to another pair of words. Above and below. All right. This ought to ring a few bells. 13 degrees above 0. That's the sort of thing you hear on the news at night time, okay? 13 degrees above 0. Temperature. 27 degrees below 0. Now, both of these can be represented as integers. So 27 degrees above 0 would be plus 27. 27 degrees below 0, which is absolutely freezing, would be minus 27. So hopefully you're realizing that negative numbers are something that you've been familiar with for quite some time now. All right, let's do one more example. Credit and debit. Debit is something Mr. Broadby's bank account knows lots about. All right, so these are sort of financial terms. When I look online at my Commonwealth bank account, there's a right-hand column and there's a bunch of numbers, and they either have a plus sign in front of them or a minus sign in front of them. If I see plus $2,000, that means that I've just been paid my fortnightly wage, okay? But if I see minus $33.50, that probably means I've been irresponsible and bought some Uber Eats for breakfast on a Saturday morning, okay? So credit means money coming into your bank account, and debit means money exiting your bank account, all right? So all of these different ideas can be represented by integers, and by an integer, I mean a standard old whole number with a plus or a minus sign in front of it. All right, now we're going to do a few practice problems. We're going to write some integers to represent the following situations. This ought to be really quick. Okay, an anglerfish, well, you might have to explain what an anglerfish is. They're called lophiforms. You ever seen those funny looking fish with big lights dangling off the front of their head? Deep sea fish. They use a light to attract their prey towards their mouth. So they live deep in the ocean. An anglerfish located 1.5 kilometers below sea level. Represent that with an integer. Well, 1.5 kilometers below sea level. Sea level is kind of like 0 on a ruler. So below sea level, the integer must be negative 1.5. Okay. What about a profit of $1,300? Well, the integer which represents that is obviously plus 1,300. A team losing a soccer match by 3 goals. Well, that's going to be minus 3, unfortunately, for that soccer team. The time 4 hours after a journey begins. Well, when a journey begins, that's when the clock starts. That's 0. And we know that time moves in a positive direction. Time doesn't go backwards, does it? So that must be plus 4. All right, a lottery win of $600. Okay, well, that's a profit. So that's a positive number. And 52 degrees below sea level in Antarctica. That is absolutely freezing. That's obviously a negative integer, isn't it? All right, now just one little thing I want to highlight. These plus signs in front of the positive integers, they're actually unnecessary, because if I were to just write 1,300 without a plus sign, or 4 without a plus sign, or 600 without a plus sign, it would automatically mean that it's a positive number. You really just need the sign there if it's a negative, okay? But because we're just starting to learn about this stuff, I've included it there for you. All right, and finally, we move on to something really, really important. This is the most important thing that is going to help you to understand the relationships between different integers, okay? Which are bigger than others, in other words. So, we have the number line. Now, the number line is where all integers live. Every single integer you can possibly imagine lives on the number line. Not this number line, because this number line only goes from minus 6 up to positive 6. But you can see these arrows on the end there. That means that the line really goes forever, all the way up to infinity and to negative infinity, if you can even imagine such a thing. Now, something that's important to realize about the number line, okay, is that if you have two numbers on the number line, whichever number is farthest to the right is larger. So let me just put 2 random dots on 2 integers. So 2 is further to the right. So 2 is greater than minus 4. What about something a bit harder like this? Well, minus 1 is furthest to the right, so minus 1 is greater than minus 6. Now that confuses people, because if we were just considering positive 6 and positive 1, we would say 6 is greater than 1. But things get flipped in the negative side. So the simplest way to think about this, at least until you can create an imaginary number line in your mind, which will happen very quickly, is to draw a number line and to draw dots on your number line See which one is furthest to the right, and that will always be the greatest number, okay? All right, and finally, we're going to do 8 real quick problems just to consolidate our understanding of the number line. Make sure we know how to use the number line, in other words. Okay, question 1, true or false? -6 is greater than -4. Well, I'm going to do a dot at -4 and a dot at -6. Now, -4 is furthest to the right. So -4 is greater than -6. So the question, -6 is greater than -4. That is false. F for false, okay? Because, as you can see, -4 is in fact further to the right than -6. Okay. Question 2. Is -5 less than 2? Well, let's have a look. We'll do a dot at -5, and we'll do a dot at 2. Now, 2 is furthest to the right, so 2 is greater than -5, which means -5 is less than 2. So is -5 less than 2? Yes, it certainly is. True. All right, question 3. What number is 7 units greater than -2? 7 units means 7 steps, 7 leaps from one integer to the next. And we know that greater means towards the right, towards the positive side of the number line. This is the positive side, and this is the negative side of the number line. All right, so I'm going to do a dot at -2. What number is 7 units greater than -2? So here's a little trick. My stylus is not working very well today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 units to the right. And my final destination is 5. Okay, so what number is 7 units greater than -2? That number is 5. There we go. We're almost there. What number is 4 units smaller than 4? Okay, well, I'm going to do a dot on the 4. 4 units smaller than 4. Well, smaller means to go into the negative direction, to the left. So starting at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 units, and we get to 0. Okay. So the answer is 0. 0 is an integer, by the way. A lot of people think 0, because it doesn't usually have a plus or a minus sign in front of it, that it's not an integer, but it is an integer, okay? All right, question 5. Put these numbers in ascending order. That's just a fancy way of saying from smallest to biggest. So 1 - 4, 5, 6, -6. I'm going to do a dot at each one of those locations. And then I'm just going to see what order the dots are in. So that's 1, -4, 5, 6, and -6. Now I have to put those in ascending order. So I'm just going to start here, and then write this secondly, thirdly, fourthly, fifthly. Okay, here we go. -6. I might actually have to zoom in. Oh no, I won't bother. -4. 1, 5, and 6. Easy as that. All right, let's try a similar question. Question 6, put these numbers in descending order. That's a fancy way of saying from greatest to smallest. So once again, I'm going to do a dot on my number line for each one of these numbers. I'm calling them dots, but technically I should call them points. That's me being a bad maths teacher. Get into the habit of calling them points. All right, 5, 0, minus 3, minus 2, minus 4, and 6. Now, starting here, and then here, 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 then here, I'm going to write those numbers in that order. No, I'm not. I'm going to write them in the opposite of that order. I forgot. We're doing it in descending order this time. So let me correct that. I'm going to write 6 first, and then 5 second, and then 0 third, and so on, because we're going from biggest to smallest. So 6, 5, 0, minus 2, minus 3, and minus 4. Okay? All right. We're almost there, even though I've said that about 16,000 times now. Question 7. Use greater than or less than signs to compare the sizes of minus 6 and minus 2. Well, what on earth does that mean? Well, we've got a little hint down here. Top hint. Larger numbers point at smaller numbers. So, if I have a big number, it points at the small number. All right? And there's another way you can do that. If the big number is on this side, it points at the small number on this side. So there's always two ways that you can compare the sizes of two numbers using greater than and less than signs, okay? So for these couple of last questions, I'm going to give you the answer in two different ways. All right. Compare the sizes of minus 6 and minus 2. All right, so 2 dots I need. Minus 6 and minus 2. Now, minus 2 is furthest to the right, which means minus 2 is bigger than minus 6. So minus 2 needs to point at minus 6. It points at the smaller number. But I could also do it this way, couldn't I? Minus 2 is bigger than minus 6. Because in both of those, we have the negative 2 integer pointing at the negative 6 integer. One more. Use greater than and, question 8, use the greater than and less than signs to compare the sizes of 0 and 5. Well, that one's easy. I know you know which one of those is bigger, but let's follow our process. Do a dot at 0, a dot at 5. 5 is the furthest integer to the right, so 5 is greater than 0, and the greater number points at the smaller number. So 5 greater than 0, or 5 greater than 0. Boom. And there we have it, guys. Now, this set of notes, it's sort of messily filled in with my very shoddy handwriting, but if you go into the integers folder in our Google Classroom, you'll find a nice copy of the same set of notes where everything is typed up properly, okay? All right, hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you next time.